Okay, so our lesson for today is CPCTC. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to learn, or you should be able to define CPCTC, identify the congruent parts when triangles are reflected, translated, or rotated, and apply CPCTC in solving congruent triangles. Now, let's begin. So we have here activity, complete the table below by providing the missing triangle congruent statement or the missing congruent parts. So we have the congruent statement number 1, triangle CAT is congruent to triangle DOG. Then we have here the corresponding angles. Angle C is congruent to angle D. Angle A is congruent to angle O. Angle T is congruent to angle G. Then the corresponding sides, we have side CA congruent to side DO, AT congruent to OG, and CT congruent to DG. Now let's proceed with number 2. Triangle MEN is congruent to triangle TOR. We have angle M congruent to angle T and angle E congruent to angle O. What is the missing corresponding angle? Yes, Cherilyn. Okay. Then what about the corresponding sides? We have side EN congruent to OR, MN congruent to TR. What is the missing side here? Missing congruent side. Yes, Misha. All right. So side ME is congruent to side TO. For the third congruent statement, we have triangle LUF is congruent to triangle BOA. So please fill in the missing information. Raise your hand if you know the answer. Yes, Misha? Okay, angle U congruent to angle O. Another, Ashley. Okay. And what about the corresponding sides? What are the missing corresponding side here? Yes, let's call Santino. BO. Okay. Then another one, Cherilyn. BA. Okay, for the last congruent statement, please fill in the missing uh, congruent triangle. Triangle BOT is congruent to what triangle? Misha. MAY. And who wants to give the corresponding angles? Please give all the corresponding angles. Let's call si Cyrene. Okay, so these are the corresponding angles and corresponding sides of this congruent statement. Now, when we say CPCTC, it stands for corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. And it tells us that if two or more triangles are congruent, then their corresponding angles and sides are congruent as well. For example, we have triangle MEN congruent to triangle TOR. Now, these two triangles are congruent, therefore, the parts also are congruent. So that is what is CPCTC. We have here illustration, two triangles, triangle ABC is congruent to triangle LMN. So since the two triangles are congruent, therefore, the parts are also congruent. So as you can see, AB is congruent to LM, AC is congruent to LN, BC is congruent to MN, and we have here angle BAC is congruent to angle MLN. Now, as you can see, the in naming angles here, meron tayong 3 letters na ginamit. So, 3 points ang ginamit dito. In naming angles, you can use 1 point or 3 points. So, ang idea dito is yung middle letter. Yan po yung angle niya. So, angle A and angle L. Okay? We have angle BCA is congruent to angle M and L. So, C and N. Yan po yung angle na tinutukoy. Then, angle ABC is congruent to angle LMN. So, angle B and angle M. So, yan po ang tinutukoy niya. So, by means of CPCTC, if you have two congruent triangles, the parts are also congruent. So, ano pa ibig sabihin yan? Ang ibig pong sabihin ng congruent, the measurements are same. For example, you have 6 units for side AB, therefore side LM is also 6 units. If angle A is 30 degrees, then angle L is 30 degrees. Okay? Now let's proceed. Let's try this one. If triangle PQR is congruent to triangle LMN, name the corresponding parts. Okay? As you can see, the triangles are reflected. Okay? The first triangle versus the second triangle, they are reflected to each other or flip. If na-flip yung image. So, what are the corresponding angles in the two triangles, two congruent triangles? Who would like to name the congruent parts? Please raise your hand if you know the answer. Yes, Irene? Yes, lahat na. Okay, thank you. So, these are the corresponding angles. What about the corresponding sides? Yes, Cherilyn. And PRLN. Okay, so these are the corresponding sides. So as you can see, we have two congruent triangles. By CPCTC, the parts are also congruent. That's why we list down all the corresponding angles and corresponding sides. And we put congruent symbol. Kasi yun naman yung definition ng CPCTC. Ano po? Congruent na lahat yan. Yung mga magkaka-correspondence, congruent sila. Okay? So, let's have another one. Name the corresponding parts. Before you name the corresponding parts, kindly name the congruent triangles in the illustration. Please raise your hand if you know the answer. Oh, paulit-ulit na lang sila. Pagdating sa grade, sila lang din yung aalalahanin ko sa recitation, ha? Wala kayo. Mga hindi naghahansak dyan. Okay, Cherilyn. Okay, BAC congruent to triangle X, Z, Y. Remember, you cannot alter the position of the letters. You should follow the correspondence. Yung magkakatapat, kinakailangan po magkakatapat pa rin sila. No? Ayan o. Nakita nyo si angle B, we have two markings, katapat niya si X. Si A, 3, so Z is 3 then. Then si C is 1, Y is 1. Now, let us name the corresponding angles in the congruent triangles. Who would like to name the corresponding angles? Yes, Caitlin. All right, so these are the corresponding angles, and the corresponding angles are congruent. What about the corresponding sides? Any other hand? Okay, tawag nga tayo dito. Let's call si Ashley. Si Ashley. Okay, so these are the corresponding sides, and by CPCTC, the corresponding sides are also congruent. So, yun po yung pinaka-idea ng CPCTC. BC. If this is 7 units, what is the measurement of side XZ? Anyone? So if side AB is 7 units, what about side XZ? Or side ZX? Yes, Irene. 7 units. If angle Z is 110 degrees, what is the corresponding angle and its measurement? Sherilyn. Very good. And if side BC is 3y and side XY is 15, what is y? Solve for y. Okay, go ahead, Sherilyn. Okay, so paano ba nakuha yung 5, Sherilyn? Pwede mo ba ikwento? Okay, kasi itong 3 and y daw, pagka pinalitan natin daw yung y ng 5, equals to 15. At dahil si BC daw at saka si XY ay congruent, dapat equal sila ng measurement. Another way to solve this one is by listing down the congruent parts. Side BC is congruent to side XY. Yung kanina, yung ginawa niya is based dito sa illustration. So if you can solve it mathematically, BC congruent to XY, then BC is 3y, XY is 15. And when we say congruent, that means the measurements are equal. So 3y is equals to 15, so y is equals to 5. 15 divide 3, that is 5. Okay? So nakuha po, Section Acevedo. Okay, pakitype po sa chat box kung clear na po ang ating lesson. Type clear. Kung clear na po ang ating lesson. If you don't have question, type po ng clear. Alright, so let's wrap up our lesson for today. So, what do you mean by CPCTC? What stands CPCTC stands for? Anyone? Please raise your hand. Okay, si Misha. Corresponding parts of congruent angles are okay, very good. Now, please fill up the missing information. We have 2 triangles and the 2 triangles are congruent. By CPCTC, the corresponding parts are also what? Yes, Santino. All right, so meron kang 2 congruent triangles, yung parts din congruent. Now, for your activity today, please copy and answer this one. Paki-screenshot po muna. As well as this one. Okay?